Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and I got Phil in the line with this month's episode of the Bitter Endgame Draft. If you haven't caught Phil on Liberty and Finance, he'll be on there again on February 25th. Maybe it'll be published on February 26th or something if you told me correctly. Is that right?
February 24th, but they
24th.
do often delay publishing a few days. So look for me
Okay, well,
around that time.
whatever. He's been good on Liberty and Finance. Follow him on the Bitter Draft on Rumble. There will be a link in the description below. We were just talking about the excitement going on, and really, for me personally, it's not even necessarily in the gold market, though that is exciting. I can't say that it's not exciting because there's a whole bunch of stuff happening on the COMEX and gold moving from London to New York or from wherever it is to New York. We don't even know if it's actually London. It could be Switzerland or something. You really have to check those importation numbers, but it doesn't really matter. Um, the fact is that the instability in the monetary sphere is being reflected almost everywhere in every political outcropping, in every political space in the world almost, and it's getting very obvious. It feels to me, frankly, like the opposite of the feeling that I had during COVID, where I felt like I was being pushed harder and harder into a hole, where I would either have to fight out of it, which I did, or I would bury myself alive. And now I feel like every day darkness is lifting and confusion is becoming straighter. What is that? Confusion is becoming untangled as DOGE and Musk unweave this tangled web of disgustingness, and the worst of the Democratic politicians protest so vehemently. It's a beautiful thing to watch, and really seeing every statement they make hurt themselves because there's nothing really that they can say other than that we're wrong, we're sorry, and we'll try to get it better next time. And I'll see you later because my career is over, which is basically all they can say. It's so cathartic to see. And from here on out, I'm hoping that gold just goes up and up and up, and we just end this because the whole monetary implosion is going to be the exclamation point to what we're already seeing on the ground in politics and in what else? What else besides politics? We're seeing everything coming apart in just perceptions of what America has been since the 1960s. It's all coming apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And hopefully there's a nugget under there that we can all cling to at the end.
Oh, there definitely is a nugget because this is very, very positive. When
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
like it's like what when you're a junkie and you're going through the withdrawal and it hurts, and you can't deny the pain, but at the same time, you've already resolved that you're done with this, and okay, let's go through the pain. And I know that something much better is on the other side. That's the condition that America is in right now. Now, us personally, we were never direct junkies. We were only affected by their behavior. We never bought into it. But the people that bought into it, and now they have to deal with all these leaders who we thought were looking out for our interests, they're not. And we see that they've been hurting us now. And now we have to accept that and change our course. Whereas we're trying to politely look at them and point at them and say, just told you. Okay.
Well, I told you before we went on air, the analogy I have for you is you're like an amateur astronomer who like looking through your telescope, you saw like this meteor heading straight for us. And you went
Mhm.
to like the publishing, the big fancy telescope houses, and they were like, "No nonsense, Ruffy, nonsense, nonsense. You're just a crazy kook, crackpot. That meteor's going the opposite direction. It's fine." And now it's like the meteor, you can like see it. It's visible in the naked eye. People are starting to get a little panicky, and you're just
Mhm.
sitting there like, "Yeah, well, I told you guys this was coming towards us."
Yeah. So I just wanted to start with a little story that happened today, a few hours ago. A friend of mine, I haven't seen him maybe 3 years. Maybe like 2.5 years. So the last time I saw him, gold and silver were very low. It was like 2022 in that, depressing era. Uh, And it's not like he's like a gold or silver bug or anything. I discuss old goals. I'm just trying to triangulate where we were at that point. And he wants to move into my neighborhood. And he's like, yeah, but housing is so expensive everywhere. And I was like, yeah, it is. I mean, in shekel terms. He's like, what do you mean? Well, I'm like, well, in gold terms, it's down about half since the last time I saw you. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, look at the price of housing versus gold. I mean, it's down from I looked it up. It was 340 ounces around there in late 2022, and now it's about 182, 183. And these aren't exact numbers, and it's just what the average is. I mean, the fact that housing prices are down so much in gold terms, it means we're well on our way here. And he was shocked by that. He couldn't believe it. He's like, but I don't have any gold. I'm like, well, should have listened to me like 2, 3 years ago. I mean, it's just gonna get harder.
Yeah. You should have told him it's not too late now to get some.
It's still not too late. It's not too late.
Never too young to start.
As long as you can get some, it's not too late by definition. Once you can't, it's too late.
All right. Oh, and I want to apologize to the audience for my voice. I'm recovering from a very mild but annoying cold, but it does give me that dulcet baritone of a sick man, you know.
Are you confused about the economy? Well, have no fear. I'm going to explain the American economy right now.
Oh, well, you sound horrible. I don't even want to talk to you anymore.
First question. Why mechanically Trump cleaning house at the government speeds up the end game rather than slowing it down? And you did a video on this. And so when people talk to me about this, I can explain it in very simple terms. I can say, the debt must increase at an exponential rate. So by not increasing the debt at the exponential rate, Trump is guaranteeing a crash, in fact, speeding it up. But you can actually explain this mechanically, which I really like, because you can go into the actual banking system and show what's going on, which is something that's a little bit hard for me to do. I mean, I can understand when you do it, but for me to go and try and do it is a little bit advanced for me. So I really enjoy if you could walk me through the process and I can ask the questions. And the other thing is it's very, the absolute normie conservative, Trump voting Republican thinks like he's getting the house in order. At a minimum, we're gonna delay the crash, and we might even avoid it altogether with all these, with all this new efficiency we've got from, the smartest men in the world working on this problem night and day. But actually, the cleaning of the house is revealing the fraud, which is causing the crash to happen faster. So,
Yeah. Yes. I'll say it very briefly because I already have a video on this out, and I want to get your perspective on it. Or your way of describing it. We have different ways of describing the same stuff. Just the mechanical version of why spending cuts, and I'm not against spending cuts. I love spending cuts. I love what Musk is doing. I love what DOGE is doing. I think it's great, and I'm not protesting it at all. I'm just saying what the natural consequence of it is going to be. That the Treasury has this huge bank account of hundreds of billions of dollars. I think right now it's at 830 billion. All that money does not exist in the banking system, meaning banks cannot use this stuff to pile loans on top of it. They can't use it for anything. It's like an entry point from a different dimension into the monetary sphere, but it's not there yet. So the less the government spends, the less money will be in the banking system because they won't be putting this stuff in. And meanwhile, the government is still sucking money out of the banking system because they still have taxes coming in. They still sell a certain amount of debt, within the debt ceiling. And they have other income coming into whatever comes into their account, whether it's taxes or some other income from whatever. It's still money that gets sucked out of the banking system. So the less that they spend, the less money will be in the banks, and therefore the less high-powered money they have to build loans on top of, and the money supply stagnates, shrinks. And that's what causes a banking crisis, because you need the money supply to expand at an ever increasing rate in order to continue the Ponzi. It's how all Ponzi schemes work, right? You have to more and more investors to pay back the old ones. Same thing with
so
the debt investors. They need to pay back the old ones, and you can't do that if the money supply isn't expanding. So if Musk and Trump cut spending, they're going to speed up the next crisis.
So I know this happens, but I don't know why this happens. So when the government borrows money, the Treasury, sorry, the Federal Reserve buys the bonds. Is that correct?
When the government borrows, not always, they don't
Issues
always.
bonds. Not
Yeah,
always.
when the government issues bonds, not always, not the Federal Reserve doesn't always buy them. They don't own all the bonds. Sometimes
Oh, okay. The
they're
private banks can borrow it too, or buy
yeah,
the
yeah.
bonds.
Anyone can buy bonds. It's just if you want to increase the monetary base, then it would
Yeah.
have to be the Fed that does it. Otherwise, then those bonds are bought by existing money supply, and then you can build a little pyramid on top of that internal pyramidal money, but it's not going to be as powerful as, let's say, the Fed buying it and introducing new
New
dollars on
credit
which
and
to pyramid even more debt.
so the let's for hypothetical sake, let's say that the Federal Reserve is buying these bonds. So Treasury Department issues new bonds.
Mhm.
Federal Reserve buys those bonds with printed current with freshly printed money. And so the government now has that and can go spend it. And that enters the banking system through the government paying its employees and buying the tanks and the airplanes.
Yeah.
And so if the government doesn't issue those new bonds, the outside private banks can't get their hands on the newly issued credit and they start going into the tailspin.
Right. They could start going to the tailspin unless there's like this huge burst of productivity,
Or
where
private
they,
credit. Yeah.
yeah, it like if the Federal Reserve isn't buying and only existing dollars are used to buy the new debt, the monetary base stays the same. But just because the base stays the same doesn't mean you can't make the pyramid even higher. It's just you'd have to make it thinner and thinner at the top and have to be higher and higher and higher, and you'd have the same base. Like in order to put it in a more stable way to build a pyramid higher is to make the base wider, right? Then you can stack more. But
Okay.
you could theoretically stack it on the same base or even a smaller base as long as it's structurally, stable enough not to fall over, which is what happens in a very productive period, like let's say the mid to late 90s, right? When the money supply or the monetary base was not expanding and still, things were still functioning because people were able to pay debt back even though the money supply wasn't expanding because of the huge productivity that existed back then.
Now, because of the exponential growth required of the debt, so our productivity would also like we would have to have something exponentially better than the 1990s in terms of productivity, right?
Yeah, because
Like
of
we'd have to have like
yeah.
cold fusion or something.
Yeah, cold fusion.
Room
Because some
temperature
people are
fusion.
saying it could be AI. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's too late for that. But
Well,
you could
I'm not.
argue that AI will save everything and keep us going another 10, 20 years on this fiat system, and then I would like be in a depression. So I don't want
I'm
that.
not terribly impressed with AI so far,
Mhm.
but I don't see. I mean, it can do weird things. It does neat things that you're like, wow. But I haven't like when you watch an AI video, you don't think like, oh, that's the real world. No, it's like it'll be like you and like an arm will be growing out of your chest. You're like, huh? And like your
Yeah.
background is like constantly changing. Like if you watch AI videos, they don't look real. They're in the uncanny valley still. So no, I'm not terribly impressed with it so far.
I just
And
thought of three memes that I could put in there with an arm growing out of my chest.
Well, if he got flushed down the toilet, he probably came through here. Everything always does.
Yeah.
all right, do we want to talk any more about the cleaning house at the government? I mean, I do agree. I do agree that the cleaning house is good, and I guess it's better to start this process now because once they discover that the money's all gone or like this isn't money and this all blows up, it's going to collapse by 95 to 99% anyway. So
Yeah.
we might as well start letting people go now.
I think it's
Doesn't hurt.
absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary to have the catharsis before everything falls apart. Because if everything falls apart, nobody's gonna have time to look at this stuff and to say, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at all this corruption! Look at all these
That's
disgusting
true. It
programs!
would just blow
Look
up.
at all these, funding gay dancers in Ukraine and Afghanistan or whatever, and paying for Afghani crops of, I wonder what they are. Probably poppies for, you know, bagels or heroin. Pick whichever one you think it's gonna be." But you have to have this beforehand. Otherwise, it's going to come out, no one's going to pay attention, and everyone's just going to be at each other's throats. Right now, people are still fed, and that's a very good thing because then they can tune in and see all this corruption and say, "Look, wow, our society has really gone the wrong path for a very long time." The more people that realize that before everything collapses, the more stable will be the collapse because when it happens, they'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I see why this is happening now. Look what we've been doing." they might not understand it from a monetary perspective, but they'll understand it like when a society becomes this corrupt, it collapses. That's what happens. And we have, and as I tend to think a lot, we have the direction my brain goes, and we have very explicit biblical examples of this. You can track the late the books the Book of Kings especially is about the rise and the collapse of of a society. That's what it's about. And towards the end of it, we get these like wild swings, crazy kings. We have this like ultra righteous king, followed by this crazy murderer, followed by another very, very righteous king, followed by another crazy murderer. It's just like very, very wobbly. But before everything falls apart, you have one final righteous king. And I'm not saying Trump is righteous or anything like that, but he is a conduit for a lot of righteous people to come out and affect society. So I think that's where we are on the American stage. Like maybe the last great repentance campaign before everything falls apart, because like it's not like you could have one great president and then all the problems that were built up for the last 70, 80 years are suddenly solved by this one great guy. That's not what's happening.
So
It's just not.
my worry is that the Trump and Elon and the guys trying to do this last minute reform, even though it's we agree it's guaranteed to fail, they're going to get the blame for it. And then the some sort of demagogue on the other side is going to run and say everything was running fine up until Trump and his friends blew everything up. So nominate me and I'll take everyone's gold, and I'll guarantee a house for everybody and a chicken in every pot, and I'll use the power of the state to make sure that all the resources are adequately distributed. You know, so I'm
I
worried.
don't
I'm
see
worried.
that happening.
You don't see it happening? Okay,
No.
because that's how Roosevelt got in after Hoover. Though Hoover himself was starting to lean toward, he's giving in to the progressive socialism, but Roosevelt came in and said, "I'll take that up to an 11." So I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see. I mean, we'll have to see who run. I don't know if Pocahontas is going to run for president and try and beat J.D. Vance or whoever the next runs are, but we'll see what happens.
Well, JD Vance seems like a shoo-in for the next president if this term goes reasonably well enough. Yeah, but it's crazy to even try to make these predictions now because everything is so
Yeah.
unstable and everything changes by the day that how are we going to know where we are in the next
Well,
three
the end.
years?
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it's yeah. How the end game is judged is going to determine which way this goes, and I don't know. I really don't know which way that's going to go.
Yeah. Well, what's your way of explaining why spending cuts will speed up the end game?
Well, like I said, the mechanics of it are pretty high level, and whenever you configure your charts, I'm like, oh yeah. I sometimes have to watch a couple times. The way I explain it to like a normie who's interested is just say like, look, if you once you understand that the debt must grow at an exponential rate, and I can go through the whole thing where when you borrow $100, the bank records $110 on their side, and if you don't have that $110, you can't pay off that loan. So therefore, that extra $10 must be generated by additional credit, and that creates this exponential, credit pyramid. And so I would use that, and I would say if the government stops their debt growing, then that slack has to be picked up by somebody. And if the private sector is already drowning in debt, there's nobody left to pick up that slack, and then therefore you're going to have a deflationary crash.
Right. Exactly.
That's it. So that's as simple as I can get to a normie, but that may be unsatisfying to a more sophisticated viewer.
Mhm. Right. Well, so let's get to the second topic here. That
All
says
right.
that the Treasury Secretary has made noises. Scott Bessent
Yes.
has made noises about revaluing the dollar to gold. If they actually do this, how does the end game differ from a deflation hyperinflation scenario?
Yes. So Scott Bessent I know what happened. I guarantee you what happened.
By the way, do
Scott
you know
Bessent,
anything about the guy?
yeah, he's a hedge fund manager. I think he's a billionaire, personally, and his largest holding of his hedge fund was gold. So
Oh,
he's generally moving in the correct direction. So I guarantee what happened. Scott Bessent got in, and he's actually he's a gay man with adopted children too. I don't know if that matters, but he
I had no idea, and nor do I give a crap or whatever.
yeah he I guarantee I know what happened. He went into the Treasury Department. He like opened the books and went, "Oh my God," and like closed the books again. And he's like, "We are in big trouble." But he's not going to say that. So what he did was he let out a trial balloon. He said, "Oh yeah, we're thinking about revaluing to 40%, maybe revaluing to 40% gold,
He
backing the
actually
dollar." And
said
he's just
this?
yes, yes, in casual conversation. Yeah, we're thinking about it. We're looking at all the options, all that kind of stuff. One thing we are considering is revaluing to 40%. And I know where the 40% comes from. So when the monetary base, the currency base, the credit base gets over 40% or under 40% backing by gold, that's
Mhm.
when people lose faith in the system and start abandoning it and trying to redeem the gold. That's what happened in 1971. So in the textbooks, it says you can back a currency with as little as 40% gold. But what they're not understanding, and this is where so many of the Keynesians get this kind of thing wrong. That the reason 40% gold, that's the terminal limit before the currency gets dumped. That's not like a stable point where you go, oh yeah, we could just keep it at 40%. No, it's like if you imagine you're at Best Buy, right? Let me take a sip here. Imagine you're at Best Buy
Mhm.
and you're running a Best Buy and the you sell TVs and you find out that like you don't have to put a TV in every single box that says TV in it. You can sell empty boxes with TVs sometimes and people still buy it and maybe they get home and they realize the box is empty and they call customer service and customer service says, "Well, you didn't buy our extended warranty package." So, and a missing TV counts as a broken TV, so no refunds, you're on your own. And for whatever reason, this actually still works. Word doesn't really get out that well, and people still come and buy the TVs. And you can start the CEO starts cutting the TVs in the boxes down to all the way down to 40%. So all the way down to 40%, people are still going. But now, once you get about 40%, the word gets out, people start posting on social media, over half these boxes don't have TVs in them, right? And so
Mhm.
the customer base starts dropping off. And now the CEO is like, well, we have less customers buying, so we need to cut costs further. So we're not going to put any TVs in the box. We're just going to sell boxes that say TVs on them that are totally empty.
What's in the box? What's in the box?
Let's see what's in the box! Nothing!
Right? And so, people try a few more times and then they just completely give up. It's a complete dump of Costco TVs or Best Buy TVs. And so now the CEO, no customers are coming in. The CEO gets on TV and he says, look, 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 look. We made a mistake and we're sorry, but we promise from now on, 40% of all boxes that say have TVs will actually have TVs in them. Right? That's not going to work, right? That you have to go back up to 100%. You'd have to say, no, we will actually put TVs in the boxes.
This box contains our own universe.
It's the currency theft of printing more notes in the currencies technically worked until it got to about 40%, and then they started dumping the currency. That doesn't mean on the other side of a crash or right at the limit of a crash, you could say, oh, we'll go back to 40% backing because the dollar is a note for gold, and therefore it must be 100% backed by gold to be accurate. Anything less than 100% backing is fraud.
Yeah.
Rafi.
Yes. While you were speaking, I was trying to do the calculations on what a revaluation to 40% would be. Now on the Fed's balance sheet, gold is valued at $42.22. Now these calculations were done under duress because I was trying to pay attention to you and do these calculations at the same time.
Yeah.
So they might be wrong, but from what I was able to calculate, at $42.22, gold statutorily backs the Fed's balance sheet to the tune of 0.15%. Now to get it up to 40%, you'd have to increase that by a factor of 285 times. So that means that the relationship between the statutory rate, if the relationship between the statutory rate and the market rate stays constant, then we're talking about 2,900 times 285, which is a little bit nuts. And you'd have hyperinflation. Basically, if we're going to go even to 10 or 20%, it's going to cause a hyperinflationary explosion in the dollar's purchasing power.
Yes.
And it like 40%, 50%, 60%, it doesn't matter what it's going to be. If it's going to be anything substantially over 0.15%, which it is now, the dollar is going to collapse to zero.
Yeah, there's really I don't think there's much structural difference between a 40% reval and a 100% reval from the average person. Because even a 40% reval is like, oh, that $10,000 that you say scrimped and saved your whole life, that'll buy a Big Mac now. Actually, it would buy a Big Mac if McDonald's still existed, but
Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase. Your kids are starving. Carl's Jr. believes no child should go hungry. You are an unfit mother. Your children will be placed in the custody of Carl's Jr. Carl's Jr. Fuck you. I'm eating.
that'll buy the ruins of a Big Mac in the dumpster fire behind the McDonald's.
That sounds like a nice song.
Yeah.
The
So
ruins
yeah,
of
it's I feel Rafi, I swear I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like you and I are sitting here lecturing a billionaire hedge fund manager who is also the treasury secretary on what money is. Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what money is. He kind of gets it. He understands like, oh, gold is, the dollar is better when we have gold backing it, whatever that means. But he doesn't quite understand. It's a note for gold. And so because you're missing that fundamental connection, you come up with these stupid ideas. Like, oh, well, maybe we should just revalue to 40%.
Yeah. Yeah, but then I think of how long it took me to figure out what money is. Even
It's
when I
true.
started to understand the logic of Austrian economics and it hooked me in because I felt some truth here, I still didn't understand why money worked or what it even was. It's like we walk around with our bodies, but we don't know exactly how they reproduce. We know what to do, but we don't know how it works. It's very, very complicated. We know basically what photosynthesis is, but try to explain how exactly it works and how to replicate it. Can't do it. There's a lot we don't know. We know, but we don't know. So it's the same thing with money. We know, but we don't know. And look, we're all just a bunch of hairless apes walking around squawking at each other, flapping our tongues. And we're lost. And every so often, one of the monkeys like comes up with something brilliant, which is it should be self-explanatory, but it never is.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go from there, and sometimes we can improve from that, and sometimes we forget that truth for a very, very long time, and we end up lost for another few centuries. It happens over and over in human
You would
history.
just think the Treasury Secretary would I think I would even feel better if he was like if he knew, but he was just villainous or scared to say the truth. But he genuinely doesn't seem to know. That's what scares me. Because
Yes, but
he's casually throwing out a 40% reval is, that's not something you just trial balloon up when you're the Treasury Secretary.
well, you can trial balloon it up when you're confident that no one will understand the implications of what you're saying. Even the people at the very top
Yeah.
won't get it.
Yeah.
Because
And by the
how many
way,
people? Yeah. What?
I do want to say a revaluation is the most honest way to do this. It's better than a deflation and much better than a hyperinflation. The revaluation it'd be very quick.
Mhm.
It'd be, it's a bullet to the brain instead of a slow hanging or a gas chamber or something. It's like it'd be much faster. So it's the fastest way to get this over with and get on to the next phase. But you would have to have a spine of titanium and other organs of titanium too, because it would be you're gonna eat the blame for doing something like that. So I don't think he's gonna do it until the currency is already being rejected, rather than doing it right away. Doing it because he could do it tomorrow. They could do it tomorrow and dodge the hyperinflation and the deflationary collapses and stuff. But I don't think they're gonna do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only way they would do it is if it would save them more problems than it would cause them in the immediate term.
Yeah.
Right? If not doing it is leading us down to some kind of Mad Max scenario, and the only way to stop that is to, suddenly back the dollar at 100% gold and take away all the purchasing power from people who don't have any gold. Um, Even that might not stop Armageddon at that point. It's look, it's very it's tough to see the end of this in a way where everyone can survive and have basically the same life that they do now. That's not going to happen. It's just not. We can only hope that wherever people land, they will be able to function from that point on, basically, without losing their minds, losing their families, losing their sanity. And some people will lose it. Just hopefully enough people will maintain it that we can maintain a basic semblance of law and order while this falls through.
By the way, there was one point you and I were discussing off camera that I'll bring up here. So if this is all theoretically, and I don't think this is going to happen to your loyal viewers, if Scott Bessent does the revalue, or if Trump and Scott Bessent, the whole team, if they do the revalue, if it's 100% and if it's accurate and if people believe it and they might test it with redeemability, then there may the silver spike may not occur. If once again, if this happens before the hyperinflation, the silver spike may not occur. So you would just have a silver spike maybe up to 40 to 1 gold. But the monetary benefits of a honest revaluation that was quickly accepted by the public would go almost entirely to the gold holders rather than the silver holders. You back me up on that?
Yeah. There would still be a silver spike, right?
Yeah.
If there was a revaluation to 40% or whatever Scott Bessent says, obviously silver would go up very, very strongly. It just wouldn't reach a 15-to-1 ratio, which would mean that gold derivatives don't work at all. That's what forces a 15-to-1 ratio when nobody trusts the gold derivative at all. And so the only way to divide gold would be to use silver. And so silver maintains its maximum monetary value. So that wouldn't happen in an honest revaluation, but I don't think an honest revaluation is what's going to happen. I think we're going to go back to silver for some small period of time in the carnage. And even if we don't, like, I have both gold and silver. So I mean, I've focused on silver, but okay, so if we get to 40 to 30 to 1 instead of
You're
what are
still
we at,
doing all
like
right, yeah.
90, fine. Like it's okay, it's fine. I just want to get through this and be able to prosper on the other side. Exactly how much purchasing power I have on the other side, I don't really care.
Yeah, it's also. I mean, even I don't mean to make your audience start worrying. Like if you're a massive silver stacker and you're like, oh my God, there's just I could miss out on all these gains and I should have gotten gold. This scenario is I would say is highly unlikely. Maybe not extremely unlikely, but highly unlikely because it requires several things to happen before the hyperinflation begins. So I don't think it's going to happen, but it is technically a possibility that it would happen. And in that scenario, yeah, the gold holders would be the ones who got almost all the monetary benefit. The silvers would get some, but we wouldn't be if the new note, if the new dollar is 100% trusted and everyone's like, yes, please, we love this paper and it's 100% backed by gold and all the gold was in Fort Knox and everything's fine, kumbaya, then everyone holding gold would just convert that gold into banknotes and then go buy the houses for the song. And the silver holders would have to convert their industrial silver into monetary gold derivatives and then go do the same. And they wouldn't get quite the benefit that they would have had silver fully monetized, where you would just buy the house directly with silver.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're stacking silver, you can continue to do so. But if you have only silver and no gold, I wouldn't. That wouldn't make me comfortable. I do want some gold and mostly silver, but some gold is also important. Do you want to go to the third question? Do you have more to say on this?
I think I'm good. I think I'm good on the second one. Yeah, let's go to the third one. This is an interesting philosophical question for you.
Okay, so what you wrote here is, given that the stackers are going to become the wealth equivalent of feudal lords, the question arises, are large wealth disparities inevitable no matter the system, or is it just a function of the dishonest banking system?
That's a question for you.
I'll try to answer it briefly, but then I want to hear what you have to say. So,
Sure.
are large wealth disparities inevitable? Well, wealth disparities are inevitable because people are not born equal. They're born with equal rights, not with equal capabilities, and some people are just more productive than other people, and therefore they will be richer if they produce more. That's just how it is. What you want is not necessarily an equal society, but one that is fair and that rewards productivity and punishes sloth by people who are lazy and they don't want to produce not having any wealth, which is the natural consequence of the post-Edenic world that we all live in. In terms of large wealth disparities, that large and persistent wealth disparities, if you have a situation where the world is becoming more productive, right? And despite the larger productivity, I think my kids were doing a homeschool curriculum in the Ron Paul curriculum yesterday. And they're talking about the sewing machine, very simple like that. And it cut down the amount of time it takes to make pants from like 18 hours to like half an hour. So, women could get a sewing machine and buy a pattern that would be distributed in a catalog and then take that pattern and make their own pants for their husbands or their sons or daughters or whatever. And the middle class suddenly became clothed for cheap, and they also had more time to do other things rather than just sewing 18 hours one pair of pants for their family, and or even a washing machine, spending hours and hours walking to the river, slowly laundering your clothes and then drying them for another 6 hours. It just takes a whole day. Didn't have to do that anymore. But if you have a situation where productivity generally in the society is skyrocketing and still the wealth gap is widening, then you have the only answer for that is there's theft going on. Somebody's stealing that productivity. And how are they doing it? They're doing it by printing credits that can purchase this productivity before other people can have those same credits. So they get the first dibs on the new creativity, which is what is happening in an inflationary system. So yes, there's always going to be wealth disparities, but they come down by the process of productivity, whereas if they are getting worse, even in a more productive society, there's somebody with their thumb on the scales that's stealing from your pocket.
Okay, that's how to tell. I fully intend to take advantage of this crash and use my stacks to gain assets. That would be and it's not morally bad to do so because you're giving people the money they need to get the things they need to survive. But philosophically, when I think about what a society looks like, a good society looks like, I don't want a society where only 0.5% of people who stack gold and silver now own 95% of the wealth and everybody else is a serf. I think it's society, but that is a product of the previous theft and the sudden revelation of that theft. But I'm hoping that afterwards things will balance out to a more it might spike up to where half a percent of the stackers own 95% of the wealth or whatever the number is, but hopefully it'll balance out to something much more equitable on the other side of the end game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, they'll have to. I think in the immediate aftermath, you have capital going for dirt cheap prices in terms of real money, and then the gold and silver stackers in an emergency will buy up just anything they can get, just so money can be distributed, right? People aren't worried about the value of the capital so much as they need money to participate in the division of labor, or they're going to die. So once that's over, and then you have the situation where there's like a few stackers, 10, 100,000 stackers in the world with all the capital, but nobody can manage that amount of capital. I mean, especially because a lot of the stackers like you and me, I'm not a capitalist. I never was. Yeah, you're more of a capitalist than me. I don't know what to do with all these assets. I can't manage them. I'm not a businessman. I don't want to
I'm not a
be.
businessman.
Okay. So we will just take it all for safekeeping in the immediate aftermath. Just like, okay, just give it to me. Here's some money, and I'll watch this stuff. I'll just like make sure that it doesn't disintegrate in the meantime. And then when everyone has enough money to basically survive, then what we're gonna do is we have this huge empire. Like, what are we gonna do with all this stuff? We have to like sell it
Sell
for a
it.
profit to somebody who has more money and more talent than us, and who knows how to work with this stuff and who wants to.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be the handoff guys, like, or a double reverse or a flea flicker. I don't know, whatever football play you want to analogize, but we're just they're handing it off to us for safekeeping because they need someone with money and we have it, and then once enough people have enough money, we're not going to be capitalists anymore. And maybe we'll keep a little chunk of it just so we can have a business and we can say, oh, now we're businessmen. We'll probably fail at that too, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what am I going to do with myself after this, and I'll probably just end up teaching economics somewhere, either online or yeah, in fact I've told my viewers that I'm going to try and keep the bitter draft going on whatever the other side of the in game the internet looks like. So I'll probably just end up doing that. But in terms of like running a business empire, like it's
I
it's
have
not
I have
something that
no
appeals to
desire
me
for
at
that.
all.
I would like to write. I would like to learn and write books and, keep exercising, raising my kids, teach, maybe, run the third temple,
Be the treasure.
be the treasurer of the third temple in Jerusalem, in charge of the silver hoard there. Who knows? The head of the Bank of Israel. I don't want there to be a Bank of Israel, but that's really my job. Just like stand at the entrance to the Bank of Israel and say, no one's coming in. I'm just going to burn this place down.
So what we're saying is the two guys who are going to end up with 95% of all the resources have no idea what to do with those resources.
Yeah. We're just gonna gather them and then sell them again.
Yeah.
Just middlemen. We're gonna be the middlemen because no one
All
else
right.
can be.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Rafi?
Final.
As the end game approaches us,
Yeah, I
rapidly.
want to know. I want to talk about something a little bit stickier or a little bit more
Okay.
dangerous. I've been anxiously awaiting RFK's approval by the Senate. Um, Now I'm wondering. He's going to go after the 1986 law that gives certain medical companies immunity, and he's going to try to break that. Um, and he's going to try to organize trials, placebo-controlled trials, and try to get to at the bottom of this chronic health disaster. At the tip of it is a 27,000% increase in autism cases in the US specifically. I don't think it's going to take him that long to get to the bottom of it. But once he does, uh, what do you think is going to happen in the country? Like, are there's going to be all these families with like autistic children that are going to say, you lied to me for so long. I mean, something big is going to happen. I would like that to be unearthed before the dollar collapses.
Yeah.
What do you think America looks like after that is revealed, assuming it is?
Yeah. I think people will be up. As you can tell, faith in the system is rapidly collapsing. I think faith in the system sort of peaked right after 9/11, and then just slowly and now much more quickly is getting drastically eroded. I mean, if you look at things like hesitancy, can I use the V word for V hesitancy? I don't know if
I
everybody.
think we all know what you're saying. It's just,
Okay. Getting hesitancy of getting certain medical procedures has increased for, I mean, it used to be a real fringe group, and now it's 25%. And even my child has to get vaccines for school
Mhm.
soon, and I'm just kind of like, well, should we? I don't know. I don't know. It's a older and more standard one, but even now I don't know.
Mhm.
Like I'm not well versed on it, but it's required to continue his education in the school system. So then we'd have to think about homeschooling or something else if we don't want to go down that road. So, I mean, people put up with a lot to get through their day to day. I don't
Mhm.
know if I guess you're asking me, is there going to be some sort of wide revolt, or are certain pharma executives going to be worried about walking the streets at night? I don't know. I don't know. Probably on the margins. Somebody might snap somewhere. But I think at the end, I think people will say, well, shame on me for trusting the system, and we're not going to trust the system anymore. And I think that all ties into the dollar, because the system took advantage of the honest dollar to have an honest medical system, right? And then they just squandered all that trust to have a dishonest dollar and a dishonest medical system. So we'll have to rebuild the trust and the dollar at the same time on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, especially if what I'm picturing is let's say RFK gets in and the V religion that the country suffers from becomes a little bit less orthodox or a little bit less Haredi. And let's say you don't have to have your son take these things in order to continue his education. And then fewer and fewer people do it. And then slowly, as the months and years go by, let's say a year or two, the number of autism cases just plummets. Then I think it's going to become obvious what the hell is going on.
Yes.
And it would just the magnitude of the betrayal here would be so vast. I think you'd have a completely different country. And I think at that point, people would be ready for the end game. Like if that amount of child harm was revealed, and then all of a sudden the dollar collapsed, they'd be like, well, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. That we had our own little Dr. Mingala in charge of our public health for decades.
Yeah, but the problem is there's not a single Dr. Mengele that you can point to.
Oh, there's one. There's one
I
I
mean,
can point to.
yes, there's one, but even he's not responsible for all of it.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, there was a lot going on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The corrupt system leads to corrupt people being in charge of it. Absolutely. All over the place.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Tulsi and RFK will be confirmed on around Wednesday. And I hope that nobody gets I really hope that nobody gets assassinated. I am kind of worried about that. The people on the other side of this are going to get desperate and they're going to get violent. I hope not, but I think it's going to happen.
I mean, they'd have to, even if, and I don't want to get your channel in trouble or anything, but even if, someone like even the president was to be assassinated, there's still plenty. I mean, the vice president ain't exactly a pushover either. All these other people are now in place. Like the system, this anti-corruption system is now well and truly established and set up. So I think even with a couple people, being taken out, I don't think that will hurt the movement.
That might be why the intelligence community let up on the interference this time around, because I think they kind of sensed that they can't get away with it anymore, and we're already coming out of this. I think the tide turned a few months before Trump was elected.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think I'm optimistic, Rafi. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, me
Both
too.
During, and post end game. I think we'll all get out of this.
Yeah,
I think the division of labor will be established without too much mass casualties. So
yeah, please don't be black-pilled. Don't be black-pilled. It's not worth it.
Well, when I first, you remember my first video with you, I talked about how I was, I had a panic attack and was prescribed Xanax. The more, now having sat down and thought about this for almost 2 years now, I'm much more white-pilled than I was before. I think this is in general, but despite the pain, I think this is a very positive process that we're going to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, the awakening has begun, and it's good to wake up before the big fall, because if you do the big fall while you're asleep, you're not going to survive it. At least if you're awake while you're falling, you might have enough sense, enough preparedness to rip the cord on your parachute and save yourself.
There you go. All right, I guess we'll leave it there.